The second round of World Cup qualifying is just around the corner, and that means it's time to release a roster prediction video. And I'm going to be honest with you guys, it's getting easier and easier because, in that last window, we called up, I think, 26 players, and eventually there was 2 that dropped out, so we called in a couple of more, and that showed to be not enough players for that particular window. So I'm anticipating Greg Berhalter to call up even more players. I've put together a 30-man roster, which is... it's a ton of people. Now, there's still going to be some players that I'm having to leave off of this roster, and there's going to be some controversial moments, so I have my explanations ready to go. So all that more in this episode of The Anchor Report. What's up? My name is Sam. This is The Anchor Report show. We talk about the U.S. men's national team. If you're new here and you like it here, hit that subscribe button. If you want to support the channel, hit the like button. Let's start with the goalkeepers, and I'm bringing the 4 guys that were in the last window, and that was Zach Steffen, Matt Turner, Ethan Horvath, and Sean Johnson. Now, as far as who's going to be the number 1 keeper, it's going to be interesting. Remember, Zach Steffen has been the keeper through the Gold Cup and through the last 3 qualifier games, but that was due because Zach Steffen came down with the COVID right before the first game. So what will happen when we have all the healthy options available? Will Matt Turner continue to be the starter, or will we see Zach Steffen step in? I mentioned that in a lot of the player interviews, Zach Steffen's name comes up as like a team leader. I think he brings a lot of solidity to that back line. He's one of those field generals. I remember Tim Howard was always a guy who was barking commands of the defense, and I think Zach Steffen is similar. I haven't heard the same thing from Matt Turner. So in my estimation, I think that the battle for that number 1 keeper is closer than a lot of people are giving it credit for. Let me interrupt this video to thank today's sponsor, and that is OneFootball. OneFootball, of course, is the perfect companion app for any soccer fan. It'll give you up-to-the-date stats about your favorite players, teams, leagues, anything you're interested in as a soccer fan. It's a fantastic tool if you're following along with World Cup qualifiers, because the U.S. is playing a lot of squads that, you might not know all the players' names. You can check out the OneFootball app. You can see the formations. You can see the players, where they play, their home clubs, all that good stuff, as well as get that vital information like what time the game kicks off, where this game's going to be played, if you want to know the name of the stadium, if you're into that kind of thing. It'll let you know all that stuff in the app. For a free download of the OneFootball app, you can click the link in the description. You will not only be getting the latest news and information about your favorite clubs, players, teams right to your phone, but you will also be supporting the Anchor Report directly and supporting a company that supports content creators for U.S. soccer like me. So thank you to OneFootball, and let's get back to the video. Moving on to the center backs, and I am taking 5 in this window, and those are John Brooks, Chris Richards, Mark McKenzie, Miles Robinson, and Tim Ream. Now, if you remember in the last window, we also had Walker Zimmerman, and we had James Sands in those center back positions. Walker Zimmerman didn't play a minute throughout that qualifying window, and James Sands saw time at midfield, and his appearance in that Honduras game was not a memorable one for me. So I'm okay with dropping those 2 names. I'm bringing in Chris Richards, the much ballyhooed Hoffenheim center back, the player that we've been waiting to see step up and seize the center back position for a long time. He's gotten a few games for Hoffenheim under his belt early in the season, and he looks just the same as he did last season whenever he was playing for Hoffenheim. Maybe a little bit better, maybe a little bit more comfortable. A great one-on-one defender, great in distribution, great with the ball at his feet. He's getting better in aerial. He's not quite the aerial threat that Miles Robinson is, but he's getting better in that aspect of his game. I would love nothing more than to see Chris Richards step in and really seize his center back position, but that's yet to be seen. He has had opportunities in the past, but he's had some timely injuries that have held him out from being a part of the top group. So I'm really looking forward to seeing Chris Richards in this group and seeing how he can integrate. Now, John Brooks in the last window was not the John Brooks that we've been used to seeing. He's not that dominant defender that we saw for years and years with the U.S. men's national team. Now, I'm not ready to throw John Brooks away yet. He's still one of the most talented players in this group, and he is still the guy who you would circle as someone likely to be leading this team into the 2022 World Cup. So I'm hoping that that last World Cup qualifier window was just a blip on the radar, was just, I don't know what that was. It's something we'll have forgotten about by the time this window is over. So hopefully we see John Brooks return to form, and Miles Robinson has just been a fantastic defender ever since he started playing with the group in the Gold Cup. Just really came in and seized that position. I think he's one of the first names on the team sheet right now. So there's 3 center backs that I'm really excited about heading into this window. I threw on Tim Ream because he seems to be that veteran presence that's just always has his name on the roster, and if you're able to bring an expanded roster, why not bring Tim Ream? We saw that really heartwarming story that he had with Fulham this week. Now that means we're leaving off Matt Miazga. Matt Miazga just started playing in La Liga again. He's getting some minutes there, and he's not playing bad at all. I mean, he definitely, if you want to call him up, you can call him up. The thing about Miazga for me is just he's so slow, so you can't really pair him with John Brooks. If you played him, you would have to pair him with one of the faster guys like Miles Robinson or Chris Richards. And if that's the case, I don't know. Maybe I think I prefer Mark McKenzie at this point. That's where I'm at on Miazga. At the fullback position, I have 5 guys. Those are Serginho Dest, Anthony Robinson, Joe Scali, DeAndre Yedlin, and yes, Julian Araujo. Now, if you know anything about me, you know that I've been pining for Julian Araujo to join the U.S. men's national team. He said in interviews in the past that he's going to make his decision in October. It sounds like Greg has been consistently calling in Julian, so it's up to Julian to make that decision. So hopefully this is the window where we get to see him. I just love his game. I think that he's great in the final third. He's a guy that's just, in every minute in the game, he's locked in. He doesn't have mental lapses. He knows exactly what to do with the ball, whether on offense or defense. He's just present 90 minutes, and I would love to see what he could do in the final third and bring some creativity to that final third for the U.S. men's national team in the fullback position. The other newcomer was going to be Joe Scali. Now, we've seen Joe Scali play as a right back and a left back pretty effectively for Borussia Mönchengladbach. I didn't think he was going to be part of the last window because he had started, I think, 3 games at that point, and there was still, there was some health issues with some of the other fullbacks on the team, but it seemed like a good opportunity for Scali to stay with Mönchengladbach through that international break and just really settle into that club. And it seems to have done him seems to have been beneficial for him because he's really settled in and had put together some good performances since that international break. But I think now's the time to bring him in to the squad. I mean, he's another young teenager. He's another player with just a ton of grip. He's really scrappy. He's great defensively. And to add to that, he seems to be growing in the offensive side of his game. He seems to, you can play him on the right and the left so he can give you cover on both sides. And I would love to see Scali as a part of this group. Now, the guy at the top is Serginho Dest. And, I've been critical of Serginho Dest, and I think for good reason. I mean, this last weekend, we saw him play a game at left back for Barcelona where he was one of the best players on the pitch. And if you remember, a couple weeks ago in the last window, that game against El Salvador, that first game coming out for the U.S. men's national team, Serginho Dest played as a left back and was just terrible. He was awful. And look, I've gotten a lot of people that say that, part of the reason why he looked so bad was because he was playing on the left side. And I'll tell you this, I'll give you this. If you want to tell me that Serginho Dest is more effective as a right back than a left back, I'll give you that, and I agree with that. I would rather see him play on the right back for a number of tactical reasons for the U.S. men's national team and maybe for Barcelona as well. But if you're going to tell me that guy, that Serginho Dest, the player who was purchased from Barcelona to Ajax, the player that has lit it up, but for both the U.S. men's national team and for Barcelona, that whenever he shifts from right back to left back, suddenly he can't win a 50-50 ball against USL players, and suddenly he's getting burned on the sideline against Salvadorian league players. That's where I draw the line. That's where I say he's a good enough player that the standard that we should be expecting from him is higher than what we're getting from him right now. Some games he's fantastic. Other games he's not. I see people say that he's a liability defensively and that he can't play defense. Of course he can play defense. Barcelona would not have bought him as a fullback if he couldn't play defense. The thing is, he doesn't always play defense. I've seen games from him. There was a Nations League game against Canada where Serginho Dest was lined up against Alphonso Davies, and he had a very effective game against Alphonso Davies. And then there's been other games like the El Salvador game where he can't defend players who are like semi-professional level. With Serginho Dest, it's not about talent. The talent is there. I want to see Serginho Dest not just great whenever everything's going the way for the U.S. and he's able to get on the ball and do flair and tricks. I want to see Serginho Dest play great whenever things are not going the way for the U.S., whenever the U.S. is getting punched in the mouth and whenever the conditions aren't great. That's whenever we need Serginho Dest to step up because he's one of the 4 best players for this team. He's a game breaker, and he can at any moment change the game for the U.S. Serginho Dest is way too good of a player to be taken out at the 60th minute of a Nations League final against Mexico because he's been completely ineffective and absent. He's better than that, and he needs to show it game in, game out for this U.S. men's national team. For my defensive midfielders, I got 3. We got Tyler Adams, of course. We've got Kellyn Acosta, of course, and Luca De La Torre, man, call the guy in. What does he got to do? What do we got to show as a U.S. men's national team that, we need this guy. We need his connectivity. We need what he brings to the table for Greg to actually pull the trigger on him. I think we saw in the last window, we kind of ran short of midfielders, and we also really struggled to connect the defense from the attack. Now, Luca De La Torre does not play the same way that like Kellyn Acosta or Tyler Adams does, and he doesn't necessarily always play the 6. He can play in a double pivot. He does that a lot for Heracles, or he can play in that 8 position for us. He can even play winger if we decided to do that. But what he brings to the table is this ability to link the defense with the attack, to turn on the ball, to run at the defense. A lot of the things that we're expecting from Yunus Musah, De La Torre brings that, not quite at the same level as Yunus Musah, but he's a player that I'm not sure why we haven't seen him lately. With the ability to bring in more guys, it seems like De La Torre would be a no-brainer, so I hope to see him this window. Now, Tyler Adams was injured last weekend, which is kind of scary. I hope that that's a small injury and we'll still get to see him for qualifying. If Tyler Adams is injured and he's not available for these 3 games, my panic flag will go up. So for my more advanced midfielders, I have the return of Weston McKinney, the return of Yunus Musah, Sebastian Lletget, Julian Green, and Christian Roldan. Now I'll start with Christian Roldan. He's kind of a utility player. I know Greg likes to bring him in as a substitute. He can play that wing position. In fact, he probably be playing there more than in the midfield anyway, but he can play in the midfield as well. Not a guy you'd probably see starting, but just a utility player to have on the team, and with the ability to call in so many players, why not? Now, Wes Mckinney is a big question. People are wondering if Greg's actually going to bring him back in after his disciplinary discretions and being dismissed from the last camp. Now, on the U.S. Soccer podcast, Greg did say that McKennie served his time. That was his exact quote. So that leads me to believe that, he's done his penance and he will be back with the group. And hopefully, everything works well behind the scenes and everybody gets along and we're ready to go for qualifying. Yunus Musah is a player that if you watch my 7 players Greg must call in for this window video, he was number 1 for me just because what we seem to lack in that last window, he just brings to the table in spades. His ability to link the defense with the attack, to just grab the ball on the defensive side and just carry it all the way up the field, to retain the ball in possession, to get the ball back after we lose it. He's just a shot in the arm to any midfield, and I think his energy and just his tireless work ethic is something that's just going to take this midfield that in the last window was just nothing to write home about and hopefully breathe some life into it. I mean, in the first game against El Salvador, we started Brenden Aaronson in the midfield, and he kind of got run over. He was not really ready for that. Yunus Musah is not going to get run over. Yunus Musah is, as they say on the Scuff podcast, a cage fighter. He's ready. He's up for it, and he's going to bring it. Julian Green is a player that's just seems to be on the forgotten island of misfit toys out there in Germany. Julian Green, honestly, for me, he was one of the last players on this list, and I kind of threw him in there because, you can just bring so many players, number 1, and number 2, we seem to be lacking midfielders in that last window, so I want to make sure that we don't lack midfielders in this window, so put them all on the plane, get them all out there. Maybe we get to see what Julian Green can bring to this team, and if he can bring that creative spark to the final third of this team, which has just been lacking for so long. Now for my wingers, and I've got 5 guys on my list, and the headline coming into camp is that Gio Reyna is likely not going to be available for this window. Gio Reyna, of course, one of the best players on this squad, arguably the best player in the last window, arguably the best player in form right now for this team. So it's a major blow, especially in the attacking third. But with him gone, I have Christian Pulisic, who is dealing with injuries himself, Timo Weah, who recently returned from injury, Brenden Aaronson, Conrad de la Fuente, and everyone's favorite Matthew Hoppy. So Pulisic is a no-brainer. If he's available, he is on the plane. Brenden Aaronson, same goes for him. Last window, he was one of the standout players. especially in those last 2 games. Got himself a couple of goals. Just always a great player. Tim Weah, I think we've been talking about how this team has lacked spark and lacked creativity in the final third. I think Weah brings a little bit of that. Now, he's not like a classic number 10, but he's a guy that is so graceful on the ball. He's so graceful in the final third, and he seems to be a very cerebral player that sort of knows kind of where everybody's at and makes purposeful runs and creates space, and whenever he needs to find a pass, he can find it. I believe he created a goal this weekend for Lille. He also drew a penalty, so hopefully he's coming into this group with a little bit of form. Now, Matthew Hoppy is the guy that's kind of a big question mark because he's kind of on the outskirts of this roster, and the forward pool right now is just so deep and convoluted that I kind of have him as that winger, but I kind of have him as like a utility player that can play winger or can play forward. We know what we're going to get from Matthew Hoppy as far as grit and enthusiasm. He's going to fight. If you need a late game sub, he can come in. He can create a spark. He can create things himself, and of course he can finish if he's able to get in behind. He's just a player that I'd like to be a part of the group and like to see him get some time with that first team, get some time, just see what World Cup qualifiers are all about. If there's an opportunity for him to get in there, he's a player that I'm comfortable having on the field, and I think he can make stuff happen for this U.S. men's national team. Now, this forward position is a difficult one. It's one there's been a lot of debate raging out there on all the podcasts and the internet, because realistically, I think there's 4 guys that are really in the running, and the conventional wisdom is that we're going to take 3. So if you think about it, you have the guys who were in last camp, which were Josh Sargent, Jordan Pefok, and Ricardo Pepe, but then you also have Gyasi Zardes returning from injury. We know Greg's history with Gyasi Zardes, and Gyasi Zardes also scored an absolute banger this weekend in MLS. So is Greg going to take all 4 of those guys, or is he going to drop someone? And my thought is that he's going to drop someone. So who's it going to be? Is he going to be Pefok? Pefok did score a Champions League goal. He's been scoring goals in his league, and he's just been doing what Pefok always does. And to his credit, Pefok has been effective doing his Pefok thing with the U.S. men's national team. He's not a very versatile player. He doesn't do a ton of things, but if you need a target forward and you need a guy to get a goal at the end of the game, you can hit crosses into Pefok, and he can get a goal for you. You know that. And then there's Gyasi Zardes. Is Gyasi Zardes going to get dropped, or is he kind of that comfort blanket for Greg Berhalter? And then Josh Sargent, the player who's been given a ton of chances but just hasn't been very prolific, neither with club nor country. And Josh has also been getting a lot of minutes at wing. We saw him start the game against Honduras in the last window at wing, and he was one of the players pulled at halftime. We just haven't been getting a lot of return on investment with Josh Sargent. So that's why my 3 are actually going to be Ricardo Pepe, Gyasi Zardes, and Jordan Pefok. I'm leaving Josh Sargent off for this particular window. And my hope is that by leaving Josh Sargent off in this window, something clicks in his brain, something snaps with him, and it's the motivation that he needs to turn that corner in his career and to live up to that hype of that player that we all thought he was going to be whenever he was just lighting it up in youth tournaments. You know, the ironic thing about Josh Sargent is whenever he was a youth prospect, he was an incredible finisher, and he was lethal around goal. It was the other aspects of his game that we were worried about. And then fast forward a few years, and now he's like this complete forward, except for scoring goals, except for being goal dangerous. He's great. He can hold up play effectively. He can pressure. He's a great defensive forward, but whenever it comes to being goal dangerous, whenever it comes to making intelligent runs and then putting away chances, putting away half chances, creating chances of his own, that's the area of his game that just isn't there. So it's a bit of a mystery, and hopefully that can snap into place at any minute for Josh Sargent. But for this particular window, I'm leaving him off. I'm leaving it off for the phenom that is Ricardo Pepe, the young striker that we're all excited. I'm leaving him off for Gyasi Zardes, a player that's just a veteran and just seems to always answer the bell, and anytime he's called upon is just mind-numbingly effective in that position and seems to always get himself a goal in every window that he plays in. And Jordan Pefok, a guy that's just, if you need that big body, he's there. If you need a forward to throw on at the end of the game to kind of head balls down or create some havoc in the box, he can absolutely fill that role. So those are my 30 players for World Cup qualifying. That's a ton of guys. Now, I do know that I snubbed some guys, so I'm probably going to hear about Jean-Luc Abusio, Tanner Tessman, and of course Josh Sargent. You know, maybe there's some Caden Clark, marked people out there. I don't know. There might be a few others out there that people want to see. But those are my 30 that I would take into this qualifying window. I'm excited for this qualifying window. I actually got a ticket to the game in Austin against Jamaica, so I'm very fired up. That'll be my first World Cup qualifying game, so I'm excited to check it out. I'm also excited to see what you guys have to say in the comment section. What do you think is going to be on this roster, and what are your expectations heading into this window? As always, if you speak Spanish, dígame un comentario en español para que puedo practicar mi español. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button, like the video to support the channel, and if you really want to support the channel, hit that join button to join the member section to get access to some behind the scenes content and to get the badges and to set yourself apart in the Yank Report comment section with your nice badge. Thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Sam, and this is the Yank Report.